What mistake should have killed you? Dove into a pool and broke my neck at the C2 level. Hangman fracture it's called. I was so drunk I thought I just pulled a muscle or something, so I kept partying. There's pictures of me with a bag of frozen peas on my neck grilling, taking a shot from an ice luge, etc. All while my ducking neck was broken. Once the disc popped out because I was playing chicken with someone on my shoulders in the same pool hours later. That's when I realized that maybe something was wrong. 1 emergency spinal fusion surgery. 5 days in the hospital. 3 months bedridden. Medical discharge from the army. RIP that career. And I'm good as new. I totally should be dead or paralyzed. Edit. I also have a pretty gnarly x-ray showing the plate and screws. Here's the link. X-ray C2/C3 fusion. Taking on a plus 70 hours a week job just for the money. I hated the job. I hated my boss and I hated myself. I could not look myself in the mirror anymore. I was this close to a heart attack. Gained 60 kilograms and could hardly sleep. But every month plus 12k on the bank account made me get up again and again. My wife said either you quit or I walk. Really saved my life. When I was in high school, me and a few friends all lied to our parents and told them we were spending the night at each other's houses. What we had really done was backpacked up a snowy Idaho mountain in the middle of winter without telling anyone where we were going. We were all fairly inexperienced in winter backpacking. The friend in charge of bringing food brought chicken he'd cooked at home so we could eat it cold in case we couldn't start a fire. Luckily I'd brought a can of chili and didn't partake in the chicken. I woke up the following morning to a fresh foot of snow and my friends vomiting out of the tent. We left our boots outside and they were completely frozen through. The shoelaces of my boot were pointing up and out and had zero bend. Me and one other friend were not sick and had to pack up the tent. The most freezing cold work I've ever done. I gave one of my sick friends my gloves because he couldn't find his. We were about 3 miles into the hike and the trail we'd taken in was totally covered and none of us were familiar with it enough to know it by memory. I took all but one pack and ran down trail to the car, making my best guess on which way to turn and marking those choices with ski poles. Got to the car, started it up to get it warm and to check if we had cell reception. We didn't. And then I ran back up trail to where they were and we carried them back to the car. I got home and felt like total garbage. My entire body was on fire from the cold and the soreness. I felt freezing to my bones and when I got home I started puking and was pastel white and sickly looking. My dad was pissed at me because I was hungover and I opted for that punishment rather than the insane fury it would have caused if he knew why I was actually in my condition. One time when I was young and carefree I was riding a motorcycle for maybe the second time. Like 30 miles per hour. And just had some wires in my brain misfire. I was like, I wonder what would happen if I crossed my arms and held the left handlebar with my right and the right with my left. I'll tell you what happened. I just narrowly missed oncoming traffic and smacked right into a wall. I remember organizing my room when I was 10 or so. I had a lava lamp on the verge of falling off my cabinet. I didn't notice until I heard a loud shatter on my floor. For some reason my brain thought it would be a good idea to pick up all the shards. I jabbed my foot with a huge piece of glass and passed out from the pain. Woke up in a hospital bed thinking it and realized the shard was gone from my foot. Was stitched back up and getting relieved looks from my family. Turns out when I passed out, I hit my head on the cement floor. I was living in my parents' basement and cracked my skull partially open and was bleeding profusely. I got taken to the hospital. My family thought I was dead. Edit. Concrete floor, not cement. Thanks for pointing out. I stumbled through a bush which had a 1 meter drop after it where I fell down. I landed on my back at the only place down there which didn't have an iron pole sticking out of the ground. Retensioning a garage door spring and the tension tool popped out. The door crashed with enough force to crack the pavement. Edit. Had no idea so many others have died doing this. Going forward would never do this again. Doing heroin alone in my room without letting anybody know. I consider that to almost be a surefire way to accidentally kill yourself due to Vancouver's opioid crisis. I remember waking up with my back on my bed and a needle still in my arm. I was out for half an hour. I woke up feeling terrified and knew that this wasn't a life I wanted anymore. Now I'm a week sober. Might not sound like a lot, but quitting from $100 a day heroin habit to cold turkey meant rat. I was not a happy camper during my detox, but I stuck it out and I am proud of myself. Edit. I just wanted to thank everyone for their positive comments. I was a lurker for months before I finally decided to make an account and definitely didn't expect one of my first comments would blow up like it did. Thank everyone for the platinum, gold, silvers, and your words of encouragement. It's hard to reply to everyone, but you can bet your buttons that whenever I feel like using I just read my Reddit. It definitely helped me out last night when I felt like I was going crazy. But I read each positive comment and now I have 9 days, which is more than the collective days I had sober in 2018. I will keep everyone updated, and here's to another happy 24 hours. Edit 2. I had a bit of a setback, but I am once again sober, and this time it's for 16 days. I had to move away from Vancouver and move back in with family, but honestly it has done leaps and bounds for my mental, physical, and emotional healing. I am glad that I have found the password to my old Reddit and to let you guys know that I am still alive and kicking. I am having a bad day today and I am honestly so thankful for all of your kind words that keep me grounded and reminding me that I have survived 100% of my bad days, so I'm liking the odds of today. When I was a kid during grad school, my mom told me to meet her at a local park because we were going to have picnic with family. I just got my first phone, a Nokia. This will be relevant later. Anyway, I got to the park around 30 minutes early, so I sat down on a bench, so I just sat and played Snake on my phone. Then this guy approaches me. He asked if I was a local. My city is known to be a tourist destination. I said yes. And then he asked if I knew the way to a local tourist spot. Now I was young and naive, and despite being taught about stranger danger, I was eager to help a tourist find his way. I told him yes, I knew the way. Then he asked if I could bring him there. Again, being a young dumbass, I agreed. Now there are a lot of ways to go to this tourist spot, but this dude asked if we could pass by a certain way because he said he wanted to go to his hotel and get a Game Boy and give it to me because I was such a helpful dumbass child. I never owned a console, so I got excited and told him sure. On the way he talked about all the children he has given a Game Boy to and how many he had made happy. I felt at the time that this guy was legit and that he actually just liked making kids happy. He even gave me 100 pesos, around $2, because I was being so helpful. Once we got to the vicinity of the hotel, we stopped and he said that he had to make a call. Once he was done, he said that his roommate left and he had no key, so we just had to go to the original destination because that's where the Game Boy was. I was like, okay. I mean, I had time to kill, so there was no problem with me. Now the thing is, from the park there are a lot of multiple routes we could have gone through to get to this destination because the park is in the center of the city. Now though, the fastest way was through a road that had fewer people and traveled through by less cars. This didn't raise any red flags for me because I was a ducking dumbass. So I told him the fastest way was through that secluded road. He seemed like a pretty okay guy and we just conversed along the way. When we were about 1/4 through that secluded road, my mom called. She asked where I was and I answered that I was trying to just help a tourist get to his destination and I was at the secluded road. My mom started freaking out and telling me to gtfo. I never heard my mom that panicked and mad, so I told the guy sorry and just ran. He didn't chase after me, but he just stared at me while I ran away. I met up with my family. Mom got mad at me for going with a stranger. Had picnic, all was good. When we got our weekly paper, I was excited to check the Sunday comics. So I grabbed the paper, but on the front page of the paper was a report about some group nabbing children for organ harvesting. To be honest, I never connected the dots till I was high school. TL. Doctor tried to help a lost tourist. He gave me money and almost got kidnapped for my organs to be harvested. Passed out in the woods after running from the cops. I was at a party in college and decided I was done, so I started walking home. Got like half a mile from campus when a cop pulled over to talk to me. It was like 3 AM and my drunk ass can't walk in a straight line on the sidewalk. My instant drunk reaction to seeing the blue lights was to bolt into the woods at full speed. Naturally, I can't see what obstacles are in my way. So at some point I had tried to either climb a fence or ran through thorn bushes. Eventually I ran headfirst into a tree and fell down. I had probably the most absurd thought I've ever had. If I hold my breath, the cops can't see where I am. So I did that and passed out while lying on my back in the woods. I woke up a few hours later as the sun was coming up and realized I had shredded my clothes and my face arms looked like I had been attacked by an animal with all the scratches. The worst one being a vertical cut that went lengthwise down the interior of my forearm, starting at my wrist. This was 12 years ago and I can still see the scar from that particular cut. The rest have healed and faded, but that one is still prominent. Had that been a little deeper, I have no doubt I would have bled out while lying on the ground in the woods, if I didn't already die from alcohol poisoning. There were probably 3 or 4 things that should have killed me that night but didn't. Not wearing a helmet while on a bicycle and stupidly turning left just as a car overtook me. Somehow I only got a neat scar through my eyebrow and some torn up kneecaps from it. But the look on my mother's face when she picked me up from the hospital, that made me realize how profoundly stupid I was that day. Edit. I did make a turn signal with my arm, but the driver apparently didn't see it. He later went over to the hospital to ask if I was okay and to apologize for hitting me. Tubing behind a speedboat. Pulled myself too far forward. It submarined and popped up in the air. I was flung forward and got tangled in the tow rope. Pissing off a cliff. Wasted on Jack Daniels. My girlfriend at the time pulled me back by my sweatshirt. Or that would have been it. I nearly fell into a ducking volcano leaning on a rope fence. Edit. Holy it, this comment blew up. Right. More context. I was 8-9 at the time, and I managed to catch myself on that same fence after I nearly keeled over it. I never let go of stuff when I fall. This was in Italy, hence the lack of actual safety procedures. Carrying a toilet by myself after having painted the bathroom. Got caught up in the drop cloth and fell on the toilet, smashing it, and a piece of the porcelain cut into my knee. My father was there with me and immediately took me to the hospital as the bleeding was pretty decent. The doctor told me that the piece missed an artery by 1/4 and that if I had been a smaller man I'd have bled out before I made it to the hospital. Being a very large man, 6 feet 2 inches and 350 pounds at the time, saved my life. As teenagers we used to smoke pot in the garage in the car with it running for hours. No idea how we didn't kill everyone in the house multiple times over. Climbed onto one of those underpasses that allow river water to flow through when I was like 5. Got swept in the current and taken down the river. Only reason I survived is my dad saw my long hair barely under the current and jumped in to save me. Car crash at 80 km/h. I hit a car that was going through a red light perpendicular to my direction of travel, came to a dead stop after hitting the back quarter panel wheel of their car whilst they barrel rolled 3 times into the nature strip. I hit the windscreen with my head because I'm 6 feet 5 inches and wasn't wearing a seatbelt because I thought I was top it. Both myself and the other driver walked away unscathed, which was the most surprising of all. I was taken to the hospital because of my collision with the windscreen but was released shortly after some scans that came back okay. I don't know what saved me or the other driver that day, but I thought I died for several seconds after the impact and airbags went off, only to realize I was a bit dazed but generally fine, which followed with moments of disbelief and joy. 3 years old. Love man M's. Find blue ones behind stove. Yum. Rat poison. In. Being a young, insecure boy on a motorcycle. Driving over an IED in Iraq that's battery had gone bad in the heat. If the battery was live I wouldn't be. Edit. A lot of people are wondering how I knew that it was there when it didn't go off. So here is the answer to that. I was in a rural area. I didn't see some disturbed dirt and the dirt road that we were driving on. But my lieutenant in the passenger seat almost hit his pants because his life flashed before his eyes. He literally curled into a ball in his seat. I asked him what was up, and he said he was sure that there was something back there. We were currently escorting troop carriers to drop off a foot patrol in the middle of nowhere. So after we completed our drop off we went back on his order to check out the spot. My truck was the only one with an RF jammer. So I took the lead up to the spot my lieutenant had seen. When I say it I thought to myself, holy duck, how did I not see that? I was the demo guy since we didn't have enough EOD in the area. So I went up to it, saw the pressure plate and wires, dug it up and there was a battery with the battery acid all leaked out. They didn't bury it deep enough. and it was the middle of summer. About 130 F out. Not good for the battery. Under the battery and pressure plate was a box about the size of a footlocker filled with explosives and accelerant. If it had gone off, my whole truck would have been dust. We had to do a controlled demo since EOD was busy, and after we took it out, half the road had a 5-foot deep crater in it. Also, thanks for the gold, stranger. Well, does pre-existence count? When my mother was pregnant with me, she went to have an abortion, but as she arrived at the doctor office, he asked her something along the lines of, "Woman, what are you doing here? Go home. The revolution has begun. They are shooting people." So she went home because it was the start of the Romanian Revolution of '89. So she decided to have me after all. Wasn't a mistake per se, but a chain reaction resulted in my existence. I had a very bad rebellious phase. At one point, I ran away from home for a week and hitchhiked my way across my country along with one of my friends. For context, we were both 15-16 at the time. One of the cars that gave us a ride happened to be two suspicious looking foreigners, older men, who spoke between themselves in Turkish, and only one of them was able to address us in our native tongue. But we were too dumb to realize the red flags. It finally occurred to us when they passed up our exit and refused to let us go when we indicated their mistake. I had to basically fake it as if my father knew where I was and that he'd be expecting me at a certain spot at a certain time, not even knowing if that would work. It did. Miraculously, and they let us go. In the middle of nowhere. We had to basically hit another ride home. Boy, was I stupid. My dad got trashed and tried to jump over the fence at Yankee Stadium with his friends. He failed and an iron spike punctured him. He remembers being rushed to the hospital and bleeding everywhere. Everyone thought he was going to die of blood loss. Didn't die, but he also made several more stupid mistakes, such as riding a motorcycle without a helmet and breaking several ribs, etc. Honestly, he is still stupid and I'm surprised he hasn't died yet. Edit. With to without. Playing with the laundry chute in my childhood home when I was around 5 years old. My cousins and I took turns dropping things down the chute while someone else stood at the bottom and dodged them. For the most part it was things like washcloths, stuffed animals, a clothing item, etc. Just so happened that when I stood under the chute, a cousin dropped a 5-pound dumbbell down and I, expecting something harmless, didn't get out of the way. That ended the game real quick. I now part my hair in a way that hides the bald spot scar on my head. Edit. Listen. It shoots the laundry down. Also, a weight was dropped on my head. Shoot. Marrying someone I pitied and thought it was my responsibility to take care of versus marrying someone for love. Okay, so, I was a stupid ensign in the Navy, and we were in Port Inakaba, Jordan. Well, some of the people on the ship, including me, decided to go on a tour of nearby Petra. Petra is an ancient Stone Age city, most famous for being the location shot of the entrance to the third Indiana Jones movie, with the Holy Grail. That stone temple in the canyon? Yeah. It's normally filled with tourists and has a tent just off screen selling overpriced wares. Anyway, because the tour was organized by the ship, we had a tour guide and even some plainclothes police, special forces, whatever they were, I forget. Basically, security, because Middle East. Edit. Also, ISIS was really active at the time, so that kinda had the higher ups and me as well on edge. We all went as a group down the trails amid the ancient city to a restaurant at the bottom, ate lunch, and then we were going to split up and let people make their own way back to the bus, so we could explore the city more. Here's where I'm a moron. I wanted to ride a camel back up, because I thought that'd be awesome. I asked a guy about it. They couldn't do the camel, but some other people offered to give me a ride on their mule for cheap, and I figured that was cool too. They were heading back up to their nearby village and talked with my tour guide saying they could get me a car ride back to where the bus was once they got me back to their town. The tour guide, who as I recall was not part of the security group, was cool with it. A little ways up the mountain path, it hits me that I'm an American military officer going a secluded route to a small Middle East town with a plan to hop into a car with people I don't know. So I start telling them I changed my mind. I really want to go back to the rest of the city. They try to talk about it costing them extra to go back, but I figure losing money is better than losing my head. So I say I'll pay the extra cost that they're trying to haggle out of me for the inconvenience of going back down the trail. They take it. I spend the rest of the time trying to catch up with the scattered tour group I'd left behind with my little stunt. And all in all, I still have avoided doing the currency conversion math to find out how much money I lost. But I made it back safely. Don't be a moron like me. Use the buddy system while traveling so there's decent odds at least one of you will have common sense. I was driving a small car pulled in front of me and slammed their brakes. I couldn't stop in time. My truck wound up on top of their car. I was the only survivor of the vehicles involved. Before I was born there was a malfunction with the airbag in my mom's car, which hit my mom in the stomach, so basically I shouldn't be alive. Edit. There is nothing wrong with me. I'm actually top of my class and going to state for mathematics and number sense. Running like a maniac to school while not looking forward. One of my neighbors left their gate open and wham, I cracked my head open and bleed everywhere on the sidewalk. I would like to personally thank the nice old lady who helped me stand up and walked with me a few houses down to my home. She may have saved me from dying of blood loss. Edit. In case of confusion, I did look up and that's when I ran into the gate. Edit 2. To clear up even more confusion, I was not looking where I was going before I hit my neighbor's gate. I looked ahead of me right before I ran into it. I also want to point out that I ran into the gate part of the fence. One last thing I want to point out is that I was 8 when this happened, so I don't remember the incident 100% clearly. Edit 3. This blew up way more than I expected it to. Goddamn. Thanks to everyone who has upvoted. This was 13 years ago. I was skateboarding with some buddies at a busy shopping center. A few minutes before leaving, we were waiting at a crosswalk to cross the street. One of my friends takes off running across the crosswalk, and my other buddies follow suit. So I took off as well. I was not even paying attention to the light, but the lane crossing the crosswalk was on a green light. My two friends in front were in the clear, but myself and one of my other friends were both hit by a U-Haul truck. Yes, really. Trust me, I got it for years about getting hit by a huge, bright orange truck, going probably 40-45 mph. My friend in front of me didn't get hit too bad. I got hit square in the chest. I had no clue at the time what even had happened. I was running. Then I was on the ground in a daze. No pain. And I even got up and instinctually ran back to the sidewalk that I had come from. No clue I'd been hit by a truck. I was more just like, what in the duck just happened? A nurse that was at the light came and helped me, told me what had happened and helped me stay calm. She asked if I was having trouble breathing. I was, but it was attributed to me having asthma. Later found out it was because both of my lungs were punctured. Anyways, the ambulance shows up. I'm holding up very well. No clue why. Kinda just thinking, okay, damn, I must have gotten super lucky. I'm conscious. Talking fine. No biggie. They only had one bed in the ambulance, so my buddy was lying on it, and I was sitting hunched over on the bench for the ride. I wish I was joking. We get to the hospital, and I try to pull myself up to get out of the ambulance, and I can't. My shoulders hurt way too bad. The EMS guys tell me I probably dislocated my shoulder and that I'll just have to get it popped in, and before I know it I'll be back home. Once inside, we get put in the waiting room. No, I am not joking. We had skateboards with us, and the desk people had no clue. They assumed we just fell on our skateboards or something. So I'm still feeling pretty good, other than some sore shoulders. Just chilling there watching Wheel of Fortune, when all of a sudden I start feeling super clammy and disoriented. I remember hearing my mom screaming he's going into shock, and then next thing I know I'm being wheeled down a bunch of hallways. It was like in shows where it's a blur of those fluorescent lights just flashing overhead one at a time. I start having severe pain, like the worst pain you could imagine. But I can't be given on painkillers yet, because I have to go through a bunch of tests first. I'd assume these tests should have been done right when I got there, but what do I know? The one I really remember is having to be picked up off of the bed and put onto one of the machines that required I be on my back. I had people grab each corner of the sheet from the bed that I was on to move me onto it. I remember it kind of squishing my shoulders inward a bit, and holy shit, that was the worst pain I've ever felt. Anyways, after a ton of tests, It's found out that both of my lungs are punctured, both of my collarbones are snapped in half, broken ribs, cracked sternum, concussion, the works. Ended up spending the next couple weeks in ICU. They didn't have any hospital beds open for me at the time, so I actually ended up being transferred to a children's hospital. It was ducking sweet. People came and sang to me and brought me teddy bears in it. And I was just jacked up on morphine watching Lord of Rings all the time. But yeah, it was a pretty tough recovery. And I went from just hanging out with a smile on my face to a scary place real quick. I went to a world-renowned clavicle specialist at Duke Medical for my collarbones. He normally had an insanely long wait list, but apparently when he found out that I broke both at the same time, he was willing to see me ASAP. He told me that he'd only ever had a few patients that broke both at the same time, because the force required to do so almost always resulted in death. But eventually I got better. Full recovery. Was a bit of a hypochondriac for a while, and was scared to cross the street for a while. But other than that, no biggie. TLDR. I'm a dumbus and didn't look both ways. The hospital is a dumbus too. Christmas Eve many years ago, and I couldn't sleep, so I took 2 sleeping pills. Was impatient, so I decided to take 2 more heavy duty allergy medication on top of the sleeping pills. Being a young, naive boy, I had no idea the consequences of mixing medicine like that. That's maybe 3x the normal dosage for a 12-year-old. I felt extremely off for the following week or so. Driving from Italy to France. I was going to meet up with my husband and should have just flown, but I wanted to bring our dog and I wanted to avoid renting a car when we got there. It was supposed to be a 12-hour drive, but once I got to Rome I realized I forgot my passport at home. I had to turn around and double back, putting me behind by 2-ish hours. Because of my backtracking, I wasn't on the Morandi Bridge when it collapsed that day. I used to do 320 bags of coke, throw up, and then pop 4 or 5 Xanax bars every night for like a year. Definitely felt my heart skip some beats. I'm clean now, BTW. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the love y'all. Almost drove a large truck into an idling Chinook helicopter's rotor blades. In my defense, it was dark and we couldn't use lights since we were in the middle of Baghdad, Iraq. Flew a small plane into a squall line. When I was 4, I went to a hotel swimming pool with my brother and I said I could swim, so I jumped in the deep end like any 4-year-old, but then I started drowning. My 10-year-old brother jumped in and saved my ass. I fell down my friend's basement stairs when I was 8, hit my head on the concrete floor, and ended up being airlifted to a major city hospital after being knocked out and still screaming. Ended waking up a couple days later and found out I was missing a tooth, and I was told that as they were putting a breathing tube in, it knocked my tooth down my throat, which scared the docs more. But I was super happy cause I paid belay for the first time in the game room and ate jello for meals. Turns out that I was actually in a comatose state and gradually got worse over 48 hours until I had 0 brain activity for about 6 minutes. So I guess I did die, but I didn't find out from my family till afterwards, because who tells an 8-year-old that they died? Taking a pill from a complete stranger while alone on a beach in Thailand in the middle of the night. Instead, we made out and he put me in a taxi to my hotel at dawn. The pill had been Ritalin. I was completely fine, just more focused, and that's how I first became suspicious I might have had it. Turns out I do.